Charles Purcell presents.
Hey, have you ever served on a jury? I served on a jury for the first time in my life recently. I've been called for jury duty several times, and they always let me go almost immediately. As soon as they start asking questions, they don't like me at all, and I'm just sent packing. I'm glad to fulfill my civic duty of showing up. I think jury duty is a good thing. But I'm also happy to walk out when they tell me I can. Yeah, they start asking questions about jobs. I've always been an arts type person or media. They don't seem to like that, especially since my work has always been political, social criticism. Yeah, if they find that out about me, and they ask, I'm gone. There was one time I got into trouble. I was a very young man. I think this may have been my first time on jury duty. And the case was some poor schmuck versus some giant corporation. I don't exactly remember what the issue was. But the judge asked us in the jury pool, do you think you can be unbiased in this case? Are you afraid maybe you'd have any prejudice? And I raised my hand because I was just trying to be honest. He asked us to be honest. So he says, yes, sir. And I said, well, this is one little guy with looks like a court-appointed attorney against this big corporation with a whole high-rise floor filled with lawyers, hundreds of them. The system isn't fair for a guy like this. The judge did not like that. He darn near held me in contempt, which would have been accurate. I do have contempt for the system, especially when it comes to money. Now, the criminal system, that's a whole different bucket of fish, which was the case I had recently where I served on the jury. I had some thoughts that I wanted to share with you. From the trivial to the profound, in no particular order here. Smartphones. Lord Jesus. So I'm chosen to be on the jury. 14 of us, because 2 are alternates. The way it works is all 14 of us hear the case. And then when the case is closed, when the prosecution and the defense rest, and the case is given to the jury, so they say, at that point, 2 jurors are chosen at random, and they're told, thank you very much, you can go home. So they don't deliberate. Only the final 12 deliberate. And that's just to guard against, if there's some illness or some emergency or some reason that one of the jurors has to drop out, you got a couple extras there. Okay. All right. Pretty good system. Anyway, not part of my thoughts here, only to tell you there were 14 people in the room when they took us back into the jury room. And it looks just like it does on 12 Angry Men. It's just a small room, just large enough for about a dozen people to sit around a big table. There's room to pace if you want to, just barely. It's pretty small. 14 people. No radio, no television, a few magazines on a rack. And the instant we got into that room, the bailiff takes us back into the room. Every single damn one of these people pulled out their phone. Every one of them. And there we sat in silence. I just looked around. I looked at their faces. I thought, what in the hell? 14 people in a small room together. Not a peep. I felt like I was in a Twilight Zone episode. Although it's been, how long have we been in this condition now? 10, 11, 12 more years since the smartphone took everybody away from us. It was just horrible, a horrible experience. I was just sad. And when you're on a jury, you spend a lot of time during the trial. This is before deliberations now. During the trial, you're alone with these people. We're chosen. The bailiff takes us back, and there we sit for, I don't know, at least an hour or two, waiting for the court staff, the lawyers and the judge and everybody to get their act together, go through preliminary motions. Who knows what they're doing out there? We're not told. All we know is we're alone in a room together. So finally they come and get us. We go out. The trial commences. And at some point, it's time for a break and we go back to the room. So the point is, we spend a lot of time in the room. Come in the next morning at our appointed time, we go into the room. Typically wait for, again, I don't know, an hour? Every minute we spent in that room was dead silence, people staring at their phones. One woman I noticed was reading a book on her phone. I just glanced over. I could see her screen. I thought, well, at least she's reading a book. She's not just mindlessly scrolling. And then I noticed, upon closer observation, that she had one phone on the table with her book. But she kept glancing down to what I discovered was another phone in her hand under the table. And that one, she was clicking and scrolling and scrolling and clicking. So some browsing or texting or gaming was happening under the table on her second phone while she read a book on her first phone. The world is just too weird for me right now. And that's the way it went. For the several days the trial continued. We'd leave for the day, we'd come back in the morning, there again, go to your room, sit in silence, look at your phones for an hour before we call you into the trial. The phone just has to go. The smartphone has to go. And by go, I mean it has to be rescued from the clutches of the for-profit algorithms. The smartphone has to be liberated from those who weaponized it to commodify our attention. Anyway, another thought I had while serving jury duty, this was a murder trial. It's kind of pretty disturbing. We had to watch the video. There was surveillance footage from a doorbell camera. This happened outside somebody's home. And their Ring doorbell system got it all on tape. Boy, pretty tough to see. It was a drive-by shooting. Car slows down. Several shots fired. The guy goes down. Horrible. I've never understood the appeal of true crime as entertainment. Never have. I've always thought it was sick and depraved to be entertained by stories of murder. Now, to be a little self-serving, to rationalize a little bit, you know, because you and I have been talking together now for a long time, you know that I really love classic film noir. And there's lots of shooting and there's lots of murders in classic film noir. Again, maybe this is me just rationalizing, but there's absolutely no comparison. It's two whole different worlds. I make no apologies for being a fan of the genre. You're stepping into an entirely different world when you seek entertainment from the brutal murder of an actual person with whom you share this world. I really don't get it at all. And yet true crime is a thing. Millions and millions and millions of people just eat it up. They love it. So am I declaring myself morally superior to tens of millions of people? Well, okay, yeah, I guess I am. At the very least, I don't understand you. I can't fathom how true crime is a thing. If you're a fan, justify it morally. I don't get it. And after experiencing a murder trial, after seeing tearful witnesses on the stand, after looking into the eyes of this pathetic, lost defendant, after hearing the gruesome details of an actual, true-life crime, a murder, how could anyone justify the true crime genre as entertainment? I never understood it. Now I'm more baffled than ever. And I'm more incensed than ever. I don't get it. I really don't get it. Another notion of mine that I came into the trial with that was reinforced was the whole adversarial system that we're under. What genius first came up with the idea that if you have two, and only two, opposing sides of an issue, that these two opposing sides arguing their cases would somehow lead to the truth of the case? Once we put our phones down and started deliberating as a jury, there was one thing we all agreed on. We were confused. There were so many questions left unanswered. Why didn't either side tell us if the alleged shooter and the victim had any prior relationship? It was unclear if they knew each other, if they didn't know each other. Just a really basic fact of the case that would have helped us to understand the story. Why didn't this come up in the trial? In this particular case, there were actually two shooters. We only had one of them in our trial. The other one was in a separate trial that we knew nothing about. We knew nothing, absolutely nothing, about the relationship between the two shooters. And we knew nothing about their relationship. Were they friends? Was one the boss? On the few different options we had for a verdict, it would have helped us to know how these two operated, why our guy took part in the crime. But there were just so many things that had us baffled. Never came up in the trial. The adversarial system is one where if a particular part of the story doesn't benefit your side, well, you're just not going to bring it up. And this is the same for our political system. Two opposing sides, and only two opposing sides, were allowed. There are going to be questions, there are going to be issues, there are going to be details that will benefit neither side. In other words, both sides, each of them, have no interest in bringing up certain truths. So the adversarial system is just fatally flawed. I don't know what dummy came up with it. I don't know who thought it would be a way to run a country. It's the way we run our trials. It's the way we run our government. I've never been a fan of the adversarial system. I've always felt this way. Experiencing this trial absolutely cemented my opinion. Yeah, I do not like the adversarial system. And there are options. We've talked about them before. We'll talk about them again. especially in government. We have to get rid of the two major parties. If we can't do that, we have to at the very least, go to ranked choice voting and proportional representation. Today is not the day to get into all that, but we will again. And speaking of the law, it's just too damn complicated. Thousands of pages of code that no group of 12 citizens could ever begin to understand. We have Rube Goldberged our way into the goofiest system imaginable. Why do you suppose that the laws written in Congress, the very laws that our judicial system relies on to adjudicate justice for the people, why are those laws so convoluted, so steeped in technical legalese? I don't know the answer to that question. I honestly don't. Maybe you have some ideas. But the problems are evident. Ordinary citizens are incapable. It's impossible to understand unless these laws are somehow translated as though from a foreign language by the experts that we're forced to rely on. Like oracles interpreting sacred texts that no mere mortal could possibly comprehend. This is a flaw in the system. There are obvious analogies. You take your car into an auto mechanic, and you haven't got the slightest clue what they're talking about. You nod your head. Okay, whatever. They diagnose your problem. They tell you what you need. They tell you how much it's going to cost. And your eyes glaze over. How could you know? There's no way of knowing. You have to rely on the expert. At the very best, you can take it down the street to another expert. They'll give you their version of the story. Nobody can do their taxes anymore. That's too complicated. The entire financial sector of the economy is entirely inaccessible to the average American. No idea. The jargon, the mathematics of it all, the equations, the complicated formulas. You have to be part of a tiny expert elite. You got to be one out of a million to comprehend the world financial system right now. And yet we're all expected to play our parts in it. We're expected to sell our labor. We're expected to buy consumer products. We're expected to pay our taxes. We're expected to make investments if we're so able. We're forced into a system we have no ability to understand, let alone control, or have any meaningful voice in it. So, I served on a jury recently, and that was another notion that was reinforced. The law is too complicated. And any convoluted system that's hidden behind this curtain of excessive and unnecessary complication, hidden from the ordinary citizen, that's a system we need to endeavor to change. And speaking of complications, good Lord, the expert witnesses, medical examiners, doctors, forensics experts, gun experts, a whole parade of witnesses were marched in front of us, we the jury. A lot of it went over my head. I wasn't the smartest person on the jury. I found that out pretty quick. Once they put their phones down, we started talking. Some impressive people on that jury. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Right now, I want to make the point about the resources. I got to thinking about all the time and money and resources that I was seeing play out in front of me. Several lawyers, the judge, the bailiff, other cops, the court reporter, the court clerk, all the expert witnesses, And I thought about all the combined hours, years spent in training, the resources, laboratory equipment that they described to us, massive amounts of technical expertise. This was the most impressive display of resources I have ever seen in my life. It was awesome. And all I could think was, just imagine if all that time, if all that money, if all those resources, if all that expertise were devoted to this poor schmuck of a defendant when he first came into this life and as he was growing as a boy. All of this time, money, expertise, and resource spent at this stage of his life, at this end of the spectrum. What do you suppose would happen if the same attention, or even a fraction of the attention, were given to his mother as she was expecting him, for her health care, and then when he's born, for his health care, his well-being, housing, a safe neighborhood, a good school? A fraction of the resources they spent putting this guy away would most certainly have prevented him from ever reaching this point. As part of the case the prosecution presented to the jury, we saw police body cam footage of the arrest, where they went to the defendant's home. So we got a good look inside his home. We got a good look at his neighborhood. Who the hell lives like this? For myself and for the rest of the jury, who all, by their own account, were very sort of comfortable, suburban, regular folks, you know. To a person, all of us were moved, were shocked at the way some people live. Now, we shouldn't be learning this for the first time because random fate brought us into a murder trial. The fact that there's a whole parallel world inhabited by the outcasts of society. So yeah, I thought a lot about resources. The time, the money, the expertise spent at this end of this poor guy's life, and what the same attention could have meant at the beginning of it. It doesn't have to be this way. Doesn't. So the trial takes a few days. At about noon on the final day, the defense rests. The decision is put in our hands, and the bailiff escorts us back to our small room. This time, he collects our phones. During deliberation, no phones. Okay, good. And now we do our job. I got to tell you, if you haven't served on a jury, I don't know if you have. If you have, you know what I'm talking about. But if you haven't, I don't think you can appreciate how absolutely profound this experience is. 12 random strangers in a room, tasked with deciding the fate of another human being. The most serious project you can undertake. And these 11 people amazed me. Every one of them, without exception, was thoughtful, serious, really, really human. Some were less articulate than others, but some of them were damned articulate. Some of them damned smart, able to comprehend and explain to the rest of us maybe some of the evidence or testimony that we didn't quite pick up on. Again, some of the scientific forensics DNA, some of the legal intricacies. I fully admit there were a few things that went over my head. But some of my fellow jurors were just on the ball. They helped me understand. Oh, okay, I get it. Yeah, when we were finally forced by law to put our phones into the cardboard box the bailiff was taken around, forced to sit down and actually talk with one another, these people were amazing. I think we came to the right verdict. I feel very comfortable about that. And I'm more convinced than ever. Another prior notion confirmed that any group of random citizens could do a better job, make better decisions than our members of Congress. You take 535 people off the street, treat it exactly like jury duty, put them in a room together, give them access to experts who can provide evidence, testimony on all the issues of the day. Those 535 randomly chosen citizens would be exponentially 1,000 times better at enacting policy than the collection of screwballs we've got in Congress under our current system. So it gave me hope. We're good people. We're good. We're smart. We're caring. We're empathetic. The jury system, again, this is my first time. So for those of you who maybe have done it once or twice, maybe you're kind of laughing at me right now. Like, oh, now he finally gets it. Well, yeah, I finally get it. So, again, for those of you who have done it, I apologize for sounding so naive. You knew this before I did. For those of you who have never served on a jury, I got to tell you, it's not easy. It's not fun. But once it's all said and done, man, for me anyway, life-changing. At least in the sense of how I feel about the people with whom I share this nation. We've got so much work ahead of us. There is so much that needs to be repaired in this nation. But we've got the people to do it. I know we do. So next time you get your jury summons, if you haven't served before, think of it as an opportunity. And good luck to you.